What is up, Squared Nation? Welcome back to the Four Corners, the official podcast of No Counters, No Combos. And we have a very special guest with us today, Mr. 305 himself, George Machado. What's up, brother? How you doing?
What's up, man? How's it going? Thanks for having me on.
Oh man, listen, thanks for being on. I really do appreciate it. Obviously, you're a huge member of the community. You're the main TO for the Dragon Ball Super card game. So we really do appreciate it for you coming on and having a conversation with us. So with that being said, I kind of wanted to ask you a little bit about how it's been navigating through the COVID-19 pandemic. Obviously, it's affecting the world in many different situations and areas, but for the most part, you guys are located in Miami, Florida. So I know that's been pretty much a hotbed since this has started. So I just kind of wanted to ask you and see how you guys were doing and how you were managing to stay above it all down there in Florida.
Oh, no, not too bad. The first, I want to say like 3 months, I want to say from the whole COVID was getting, well, the first I heard of it was like January 1st or something like that. I remember reaching out to my friend in Seattle, Washington, because I think that's where the first case was or whatever. I was like, hey, man, just letting you know this is out there. Hope everything's safe. It didn't really make a lot of waves until Gamma. We were at a trade show, one of the biggest trade shows for local game store owners like ourselves out in Las Vegas. And, when we got back, we pretty much just immediately went into, shut down pretty much all the businesses, non-essential, of course, closed down like ourselves. As far as closing down to the public, I mean, obviously we knew that we needed to stay in operations like most to really not risk ourselves. We know that landlords weren't going to waive the rent. We wanted to provide our employees with the opportunity to work. We obviously, briefed them like, hey, this is going to be pretty much, if you need the hours and you need the opportunities, that's going to be open for you guys. We don't want to cut anything like that off from you. And we just made do with, the bare minimum, right? So it was pretty tough from like March to maybe like 3 months later. We pretty much had no organized play. Luckily enough for us, like our invitational finished in like January, and we were actually looking to start it back up right after the convention in like April. But we didn't secure any, locations, venues, or anything like that. So that would have been a big hit because I know like, companies like Channel Fireball or, Magic or whatever, you could imagine they have all these contracts that they had, paid or whatever to go to these convention centers. So right. I guess we were on the lucky end of that where we didn't have anything kind of like booked up and, signed in contract or whatever to kind of like follow through with. And we were able to transition to, I think immediately a couple weeks after we debuted the Pro Play Tour online series for the first time ever. Mm-hmm. Of course, this was like a very unique scenario because this had never happened where we just had to throw online tournaments.
Right.
So we were kind of getting, the hang of it. We tested it with the Dragon Ball Super community first because we're known primarily for Yu-Gi-Oh! As far as like our following is, of course, Dragon Ball Super being, a baby in infancy compared to, a game like Yu-Gi-Oh!, right, which has been around for, a decade or more. So we tested it out. We wanted to make sure that we kept the interest in the game high, of course, to make sure that Bandai felt like it was still, worth printing sets and, making sure that there was some interaction. We kind of wanted to break the ice. Like you mentioned, we're one of the primary TOs for the events, mm-hmm, and we knew that they weren't going to kind of make that first step without us going out there and putting something on and getting some results and really seeing, the turnout. And it was, it was pretty great for us to run that. I know at the beginning, everybody knew those untap issues and octagon issues, like, the servers were getting pounded, which was good because it was demand, right? Like, mm-hmm, people wanted to go out there. Mm-hmm. They wanted to play on the online atmosphere. Untap, Octagon, all that good stuff. But the demand was just, there was so much activity, the servers weren't able to handle it. So it kind of got a little bit rough, but eventually, I believe Untap started adding a little bit more server capacity or whatever. Yeah, it just took off really well. We had a lot of like big name players, Amani Edwards, Andrew Duvall, a lot of these, great players making that transition online and making an online metagame. Like, it was crazy. Like, there was no metagame. Like, there was no competitive stuff. Our series was producing like buyouts on cards.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we advocate that type of stuff. That's great because people, like, even, just members in the community, they have their own, TCG player store, whether they be an actual brick and mortar where they pay overhead or not.
Right.
Most of them are just freelance, right? They just sell cards on TCG Player. I know a lot of people that do that as like a side hustle or like, on top of their job, or maybe they lost their job, so now they're just selling cards, right? Yeah. On TCG Player, and that's a legitimate thing, right? Yeah. Like, that's, you lose your job, you don't have any job opportunities, like, what do? Like, you start selling cards, right? So it was great because it was not only producing jobs for our second company, which is PPG Event Management, was also producing jobs and orders for our employees that chose to come into work on the retail side of things as Pro Play Games. But it was also causing a lot of activity and demand and volatility in the secondary market via TCG Player, where, maybe those that were a little bit more fortunate can spend their stimulus checks on cards that they wanted, decks that they wanted to pick up, or, just hopefully, sit here on the sidelines and hope for, Bandai to announce something, which they eventually did. I think about a month after seeing the success of our tour and everybody's involvement into it, they decided to go ahead and follow our same, we spoke with them, we told them the pros and cons, what was working, what wasn't working. We ended up agreeing on Untap as the platform, and slowly we transitioned to webcam as we all felt mutually that it was maybe not as streamlined as a process, but it was definitely it gave you more, I guess, human interaction, and it also incentivized the buying and selling of cards, which was already doing, with Untap, but there's only so far you can go. Obviously, like, for you not to own any cards and play on Untap, you can see how that would kind of be counterproductive to, and I think probably one of the major factors as to why Bandai really hasn't stepped up to the plate in the way that we've wanted to in an official client, because there's arguments for and against that as far as its impact on the physical card sales. But yeah, that's pretty much our whole COVID scenario. Like, first it was really tough, but the online series was really big. And then, from there, I think Florida was the first to kind of just, I guess, be a little bit more loose. And obviously show with the, huge spike of cases. Thankfully, I think we've only had, we had one of our co-owners that had it. I've never had it. One co-worker. So our co-owner had it, Philippe. I think one of our co-workers, had it, and he self-quarantined for a couple of weeks. Both of them self-quarantined, I think, for a couple of weeks, and we're back after their test came back negative. And then no patrons that we know of got it at all. So that was fantastic. Thankfully, the two that got it, the co-owner and one of the co-workers, don't really work directly with customers. And regardless, we were always making sure that everything was sanitized, the binders, et cetera, et cetera. So other than that, we were able to pretty much start organized play a lot earlier than, let's say, some states. And we kind of get, everybody was really starving for this, personal interaction. And it showed, we were getting a lot of great feedback from the community coming out, a lot of big numbers, 20, 30 people. And it was just great. We were able to pretty much not miss a beat after those 3 months. We followed all our, governor's calls as far as this is your capacity now, this is your capacity now, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And I think we're pretty much in phase 3 now. And, this is the closest that we've been to normal. And there's probably another few months left in it, but, we'll continue to follow it little by little. But that was pretty much our transition through COVID, and it went pretty smoothly for us. Based on like other conditions and state guidelines, it might be, much stricter and much harder for others.
Well, yeah. I mean, I definitely appreciate the whole backstory because, it, you don't really think about it on surface value, but there's definitely been a long timetable that we've been in this, global pandemic, and a lot of moving pieces go into it, and a lot of things can change, in the blink of an eye. So I'm definitely glad that you guys have practiced your safety and your protocols, and you're following your the rules and everything that's laid out by state officials and stuff like that. And it's definitely a testament to the passion that you guys have for keeping the game going. I mean, out of necessity, you guys basically developed a new kind of meta overnight, with the online play and stuff like that. And, obviously, if things were normal, there probably wouldn't have been a demand for an online meta or an online option to play the game. But just out of necessity, that kind of had to happen. And that's what's kept the game going for, the past couple of months. So now, with that being said, you're starting more organized play in the stores and stuff like that. But I don't. My opinion is I don't think it's ever going to go back to just one way of playing the game. So, in your opinion, with the introduction of the online webcam events and the untap events, do you think that's going to impact the community in a more positive way, attracting more players so that we can grow, organically and get more players playing the game in real life as opposed to online and webcam events and stuff like that?
That's a tough one because honestly, it is an extra hurdle to already playing a card game that may not be the easiest for new players to pick up.
Right.
Just because of so many, like the decision tree in Dragon Ball Super is, I think, larger than in any other game. And that's one of the reasons why I like it. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people that play it like it. But to get new player acquisition, I mean, Dragon Ball's never been in the best position, per se, other than its IP, right? We love Dragon Ball Super. We love the anime. That's reason enough for a lot of people to just give the game a try.
Right.
But webcams, I feel, are a double-edged sword. And trust me, I was the first one to advocate, we transitioned from Untap to webcam. But I think Untap, webcam, like, I'm putting them in the same boat. It's hard. It's really hard to acquire players without an official app, without an official platform to play, because what happens with these official platforms, I mean, take the Dragon Ball Super app, the card game app, though it's very limited, that's a great way to teach the game. Like, that's how I taught my wife to play the game. Like, that's how, when people come in the store, instead of sitting them down and doing a tutorial, because there's so many, leaps and bounds already to the game as far as played, the best way to do it is to just have, a free online client. And if you're worried about that cannibalizing your card game sales, you just limit it in a way. You can pull a Yu-Gi-Oh! Where you create a whole other game, a baby version of your game, or, you can do it like Pokemon, where you incentivize card game sales through the digital codes in the physical packs. So you have to buy physical packs in order to, play the online version. And yeah, I mean, it's just hard, to get a new player to not only pick up Dragon Ball Super and their Dragon Ball Super, but now buy a $80 webcam. It has to be 1080p. It has to be 720. You got to have it in this specific thing. It's not ideal,
right?
Right. And I think definitely the new player acquisition is probably the area where most of the games are suffering now if they don't have an online, client. But at the end of the day, the big three have the online client, and that's why they thrive so much. Not only because of years, but you could always shoot people over to the online client, and whether they have the ability to spend money or not. Pokemon, they can't spend money no matter what. In Magic, you can whale it out. Obviously, those are two different schools, but just having that online client, even if that mobile app was just a little bit better, customizable or whatever it is, or more people knew about it, I think that would speak volumes to getting new players and keeping, just getting new players. I think keeping people interested. I think the webcam events allow players that really are passionate about the Dragon Ball Supercard game. Even myself, I've taken time out of my weekend to play in an online event, right? Because I support the game. I like the game. I love playing it with other people, as well as at my local game store. Like, I'll do both, I just won't be like, oh, no, I'm not playing webcam, only physical. The big worry is getting those new players, like you mentioned. And that's hard, like I said, without an official app.
I mean, yeah. I mean, the game has been out for maybe 3 or 4 years already, and having an online client has always been an ongoing discussion in the community. I don't understand the thought process that if you have an online client, you're going to discourage physical sales. Like you mentioned, some of the other games that have online clients, I think Magic Arena does a really good job of being able to allow their players to participate in online events, especially if that's the only thing that's available to them. You can make microtransaction purchases. You get the downloadable codes through physical in-store purchases and stuff like that. And like you said, you limit the amount of cards that can be purchased through the online client, whether the booster packs are available or not. I think it's definitely something that could be beneficial to the game, especially like you mentioned, attracting the new players, because they'll have a platform to jump on and it'll be pretty easy to pick up, and then they can make the decision if they actually want to commit to it and invest into the game, because we're stabilized right now, the community is really good, everything's positive, but obviously what's going to put the game over the top is getting new players into the game. So I definitely agree with what you've been saying. So you personally, running PPG, which is the main TO for the Dragon Ball Super card game, and has been for quite some time, since ARG decided to pull out, I think a couple years ago, from the game. When do you get a break? Like, when does the work stop and the fun start? When do you actually get to sit down and play the game?
Yeah, not very often. Between spending time with my wife, balancing the work, balancing the events, balancing the team. There's a lot of different things, a lot of different roles I like to take on, to make sure that I balance. To become sane working a person without all this work. So whenever I get a chance to, honestly, I try to participate locally first, because I love my the Dragon Ball Super community, the environment, the community that we have at the shop, knowing that I'm not just here to facilitate them in a way that we make profits off them. It's more like I'm there to enjoy the hobby. At the end of the day, I'm in this because it's something that I enjoy, right? It's not something that is ludicrous in a way that, if you're, that's the only reason to do it, right? Like the only reason to do this is actually your passion, because it's a hobby or whatever the case is. Mm-hmm. So whenever I get a chance, I like to, at first, participate locally in some type of events, show face, make sure, that's why I'm such a big advocate of content with the games, because you don't see a lot of card shops. You see every card shop sell boosters, right? You saw every card shop. Most card shops sell singles. You don't see a lot of card shops, make dedicated groups, dedicated content, support, a sponsored team or whatever the case is. So I like to innovate in that way, to be like, hey, we support you. Maybe the better players, maybe the people that come in store and want to build a community and want to have people to play with. Like we support that type of stuff. So it's pretty much whenever I try to get a chance. Every other weekend, maybe we try to play in the tournament, things like that. But always, first and foremost, I try to do it in store, just so that everybody sees that we're interacting and things like that. But every so often, if I get the opportunity or weekend off, also I'll play in a webcam event, if that's something, just because that's the closest that you can get to like a regional type feel. Right. Aside from the Pro Play Tour series that we decided to bring back in a limited form, by working with other stores that may have those a little bit looser restrictions. Some of them do have caps of like 36 players, 64 players. Some of them are a little bit more loose at 100. But those are all events ran by us. So I won't be able to play in those. So the closest thing that I can get to that is really, some of these webcam events. I was able to, participate in that invitational that they had, the first webcam invitational, and now waiting on probably another opportunity to qualify for that second one that I believe happens in January. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, pretty much whenever I get a chance to. I love working. At the end of the day, it's not something that I'm like, oh man, gotta go to work.
Yeah.
Because I know that so many people benefit from all the hours that we put into, and my team too. It's not just me. It's just me making sure that all these pieces are doing what they need to do, that we maintain a certain level of quality, level of I want to make sure that all the people that participate in our events are happy, and if there's any error for us to change, I want to make sure that that's kind of always in the mix, and my team is always open ears to it, so that we can take those decisions into consideration when going forward to the next event and things like that. So at the end of the day, I'm lucky enough that a lot of my passions sometimes will coincide with work, so it makes it a lot easier than you would probably think.
I mean, listen, at the end of the day, you are basically doing the Lord's work. You're not only managing a popular shop, you're keeping the game alive with the organization of, competitive events. You guys you bridged the gap into the online community with the OnTap and the webcam events. So, we definitely are appreciative. I think I speak for all, if not all, most of the members in the community, that we're definitely grateful for what you guys have done, down in PPG, always, putting, quality up. You guys have a really good, respectable YouTube channel. I know you guys have a Patreon. You have one of the best pro teams in the game. So, obviously, PPG, that name does not fall on deaf ears. Everybody knows who you're talking about when you mention PPG. So, you did mention the Pro Play Tour coming back, and I did see the post on Facebook that you were able to get some of the local shops in other areas involved. What were some of the restrictions or hurdles that you had to jump over to get that nailed down and make sure that there was a good amount of events spread across the country?
Yeah, so I mean, it was hard, and I saw some people criticizing our choices of locations, and oh man, we didn't get anything in the Midwest and Northeast and things like that, and it was pretty difficult to not only get stores that are, I don't want to say a full operation, because none of these stores are really at full operation, but those that are closest to full operations are the ones that are. I mean, this is a big thing to ask, right? Hey, are you okay with bringing an above normal amount of players to your event? Slapping the Pro Play Tour brand on there is not something that we can do very easily, and we've never really done in the past. So, to give that responsibility to the store, not only do we want to make sure that they follow through with, our standard of prize support, because a lot of people usually coincide our events with very good prize support. But we want to make sure that they're also operating within their limits, right? We want to make sure that, though we might love the California events to get 100 players or 200 players, like the regionals or whatever, we realize that's not feasible, that's not realistic. So, obviously not legal from where they're from. They have probably one of the more stricter ones from what I remember. Both of those stores, I believe, capping at 36 or 32 players.
Okay.
But yeah, working with them to not only bring their community back into their store, give them a reason to come back in, but also kind of just tiptoeing around what they can do, what they can't do. Some stores have very hard. They have a very hard time getting tournament kits. So that's something that we wanted to incorporate at the beginning. We're we should give a tournament kit on or a tournament pack on every person that enters. Some stores weren't able to solidify that type of participation because, for example, they've been closed for the past couple months. So because Bandai kind of looks at the number of players that you report, they allocate the number of kits based solely on that number that you report. So if you were closed for the past couple months, they're not going to give you more than one kit, maybe if you're lucky.
Right.
So there was a lot of hurdles in that way to make sure that we wanted to keep a consistent participation prize, consistent pricing, while abiding by certain caps. So we have some events that pretty much have, I guess, extenders that you can call them. Like if they get past, 32 players, they give you this instead of that. So we wanted to make sure that each event was, fair within their right or worth within their right based on, the capacity that they were able to hold. So, but yeah, we were able to work it out with a pretty good variety. I think we got some West Coast stores. I think we got like 4 West Coast stores, 3 West Coast stores, and the other half in the East Coast. 3 Florida stores, but we did have a Connecticut store in the East Coast, and I think in the West Coast we had 2 California stores and an Arizona store. So I think we did as good of a job as possible making those regional qualifiers. But the good thing is that stores that may not have been informed or may not have been able to jump on that wagon will get an opportunity to host mini qualifiers. We haven't been set on a name yet. I think we wanted to finalize it at the end of this week, if not beginning of next week. But they're going to be smaller qualifiers that don't have a specified payout mandated by us other than giving invites to the event. So if the store really wanted to, if they were interested, they fill out an application. We'll go ahead and pick X amount of those stores because we only have a finite number of invites. And then they can run it however way they want. They can run it like a regional size event with prize support, or they can run it simply with just invites as the prizes. Those are a little bit more flexible because those aren't going to be on our official schedule, though they are going to be official locations for you to get an invite for. And those invites will not pass down as much as the regional qualifiers. All the regional qualifiers will give top 8 invites. These mini qualifiers may only give first place or top 2 or top 4 based on attendance.
That makes sense. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of different things that it's not just like it used to be where you call somebody up and you ask them, hey, are you interested? Hey, can you hold this many people? Okay, let's do it. There's a lot of different things, that go into it, especially now with the way that the world is. And obviously different areas are going to have different restrictions. And, like you said, it's hard for people that haven't been, operating at full capacity these past couple of months to be able to do that. I know the tournament kit allocation has definitely been an issue with a lot of local stores, getting maybe, like you said, 1 or 2 kits. And obviously when there's prize support available, when there's tournament promos available, you usually start getting a spike in your attendance when it comes to a local tournament. So not being able to have that prize support, I mean, it's tough because it might turn some people away that are looking for promos specifically instead of just playing the game. But at the end of the day, you have to understand it is a business. Bandai's not just going to shell out all these tournament kits if they're not going to move them. So I get it. I definitely see both sides, being a player and a content creator and having a background in marketing, sales, and business. I get it, in all, aspects of it. So I definitely commend you guys for at least getting these events, on paper so that we can have somewhat of a normal tournament season coming up for the rest of the year. Now the mini qualifiers, I guess we'll get a little bit more information as you guys start to, get that more organized and stuff like that. So that's definitely something to look into, for other stores that weren't able to get a regional qualifier. So that's definitely good as well. But moving forward, do you feel like the local scene is going to ever get back to normal? And I know that might be a hard question to answer, with the COVID thing happening and all that other stuff. But do you feel like you're getting a lot of issues where you're not having the numbers that you used to because people are afraid of the virus, or there's just no interest to play the game?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's hard to tell which is which because we do have being a local game store that not only holds Dragon Ball Super. We host the big 3, of course, and some smaller miscellaneous games like Final Fantasy, Cardfight Vanguard and stuff like that. And based community-wise, as far as our normal attendance before, pre-COVID and post-COVID, our Yu-Gi-Oh has increased largely due to the fact that Konami, if you are a sanctioned store with them, which we've opted not to, you have to follow their rule. It's pretty much their rules or the highway. So they pretty much mandated their stores like, oh, you can't host events. Magic and Pokemon gave you the option. They were like, look, you can't run sanctioned events, so you can't get any type of points or qualifiers or things like that. But you can go ahead and throw unsanctioned play left and right, no problem. So because Yu-Gi-Oh took that stance, a lot of our local competition at our official stores just had no choice. Like, they were just thrown to the curb by the company, and they had no choice but to not run events or lose their official license. So our Yu-Gi-Oh did end up increasing in size because of that and because of the community. Not sure exactly why, if the metagame was thriving or things like that. Those are all factors that I'm not too aware of, but that specific community did increase. The Magic community stayed pretty consistent with us, even though the local competition was still able to do Magic. It stayed consistent because one of our co-owners are very involved with the community, and they continue to come out. They're all very mature about it, and they didn't really. We didn't see a drop off too much on that end. Now for Pokemon, that's the community that took probably the largest hit. Like, we went from maybe 8 to 10 players, something like that. It was never very big, but we haven't fired a single tournament since March, which is crazy. Then I want to say Vanguard, and I just want to say Vanguard kind of dropped, I want to say, by 50%. Like, we would normally get 16, now we get 8 consistently. And Dragon Ball, I think, is on that same boat, where we would normally get around 16, and now we get 8 for the most part. So it's definitely, I think it has to do with the combination of things, but definitely COVID being one of the main major factors there. I don't know if it can come back to 100%. I think it can for Dragon Ball for sure. For other games where we saw a significant drop off, like Pokemon, I don't know if it can. Obviously, that community is a lot younger sometimes with the kids and the parents and things like that. Those are obviously factors lead into it. Dragon Ball, normally within the 23 to 30 range, so you normally have a lot more independence. You're usually not living with parents and things like that. You normally have a little bit more control as to what decisions you do, or wherever you spend your free time. So I don't know, it's hard, but like I said, my viewpoint on this is from the perspective of my unique scenario, which is Florida. I feel like we're maybe it's wrong, but we're acting far ahead of I feel like we're acting farther in the future than maybe we should be, but we've been seeing a lot of economic growth because of that.
Right.
So obviously there can't be a lot of economic growth with being stationary and having everything closed off. It's very hard to. So yeah, in some places, yes, in some places, no. It is really like we're almost like in different worlds, which is crazy to think. But yeah, I really don't know. I would like to say yes, as a local game store, that we dedicate more than 50% of our square footage. Like, our store is like 6,000, 7,000 square feet. We dedicate 50% of that to the play area, and don't get me wrong, we do get filled at 50% capacity on Fridays and Saturdays, but the weekdays sometimes, we'll have a couple rows, full, and that's it, really. So as far as can it get back to normal, I mean, I think time will tell, honestly, and I think depending on how each state, took the precautions or the guidelines or whatever, going forward, it's gonna tell a lot too. But yeah, like I said, as a local game store, if your local game store has invested a lot into play space, that's something that's become more of a risk um, now than anything. So all of us are definitely, praying for that to, come back to normal, so that something like that isn't, a complete waste. But like I said, I don't know. Time will tell. We'll have to see.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's really all that we could do right now. Is we could just sit back and wait and see what happens. We still have to follow, whatever safety protocols that we have to follow to try to move this thing along. I mean, I know it's pretty frightening to live in this type of situation because nobody's immune to anything at this point. But there is two sides to every coin. Sometimes it does come down to the fact that you just have to continue to move on living with your life. People have to go back to work. The economy has to start shifting back into a more positive trend. Money has to start circulating in the economy. There's just a lot of stuff that has to happen for a lot of things to go right. And smaller businesses, whether it's local shops or small mom and pop restaurants, those are the first people to suffer. So with that being said, obviously Fridays and Saturdays are always going to be big for like tabletop gaming and stuff like that. But you're suffering a little bit during the week. Is it justifiable to keep the store running 7 days a week?
I mean, for us, yes, because we, like I said, 50% of it is our online square footage. So we pull orders, we have our online inventory, we have our packagers, we have our sorters, we have our inputters, things like that, which will, no matter what, I mean, fingers crossed, obviously, like this obviously matter what, but for the most part, will always be having some type of flow in order to continue putting our items online, selling them to customers around the world, and things like that. That's something that we would hope would always happen, especially now we're seeing Pokemon on a lot more collector side, a lot of celebrity hype, a lot of people getting into it, and hopefully starts a trend with some of those games that don't fall far behind them, like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic, which we invest pretty heavily in the both. And then obviously I feel like it's a trickle-down effect to the point where games that just have a very good IP, like Dragon Ball Super, can also feel the effects of those, albeit at a much smaller scale. But we're seeing Tournament of Power boosters go from, they were a couple $100, then they were 500, then they were 1,000, then they were 1,500. Now they're like $2,000, $3,000. We're seeing, Beckett or PSA, I forgot which, post an article about the, Son Goku Awakened Power and how rare it can really be, and then we saw it shoot up to $1,000, $1,500. So there's definitely going to be much smaller collectible value cards in Dragon Ball Super, but it will end up being somewhat of a trend and will show a lot of appreciation with some select cards. Like I said, it's not going to be everything. Like in Pokemon, there's a lot of things. Yeah, sure, a lot of people just know about it because of Charizard, and a big hubbub is made about Charizard. But if you look at it, there's a lot of cards. There's a lot of shinies. There's a lot of stars. There's like a lot of obscure, weird Pokemon cards that have always been worth something, but now are just all across the table, just going, skyrocketing because of this, Pokemon fever that's going around.
Right.
And nostalgia sells, right? Mm-hmm. So Dragon Ball Super is still nostalgia to a lot of people. And I think, it's definitely going to be on the slower end of it, but I think it's only a matter of time before Dragon Ball starts feeling those effects too. So as long as that's happening, the market is, liquid, it's volatile, it's moving. As long as that's happening, local game stores like ourselves can continue to monetize that area that we would otherwise be completely shut out with if our place areas are done for. What else is keeping the business alive other than those online purchases via TCG Player, Amazon, eBay, etc. So I think the more diversified stores will end up hanging in there. The ones that don't go all into one game. But yeah, I mean, it's hard if you're not selling online, and obviously you're at the mercy of the customer base. The customer base can decide to move on to something else, or stop investing into the card game if it's just competitive. Well, why? If they're not playing for international trophies or metal plated cards or things like that, it's really fun. It becomes very hard to justify why to invest into competitive cards, especially when we're seeing reprints be a little bit more frequent with Bandai and things like that.
Right.
To the point where it might be more of a risk to hold on to cards than a benefactor.
I mean, I definitely agree with that. I mean, you mentioned Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh. The thing that those three games all have in common is they have at least 15 to 20 years of, longevity. Like, those games have been out for as long as, maybe a little less than I've been around, but they've been around for as long as I can remember. Dragon Ball Super still hasn't hit the 5-year mark. And to me, I'm more of a, big picture kind of guy. The thing that drives the game for me is the IP, like you mentioned. Everybody recognizes Dragon Ball as an anime, whether it's, the super revitalization that we had, with that huge Dragon Ball wave that we had a couple years ago with the anime and the movies and all this merchandise that was coming out. And then obviously the original Dragon Ball and the original Dragon Ball Z and the manga. Like, there is a huge place in pop culture for Dragon Ball, and it's very recognizable throughout the entire world. So I think building a game based off a very strong IP is a good place to start. But I want to get your opinion on how long, or do you think it's ever possible for Dragon Ball Super to crack into the top 3?
The top 3 is going to be extremely hard because none of those are very far behind the other. Like, sure, Magic might be the number one competitive card game because of the pricing and because of just all the research and all the information that they have at their hands. I mean, like, the way that they handle things, just, during COVID, they actually sent every store over $1,000 of free merchandise. They were just like, here's the hottest selling product. Imagine if Dragon Ball Super sent every store like 4 Tournament of Power boxes or something. Like, that's how absurd that was, right? Yeah. And maybe many speculate because they're getting ready to sell off the game to some type of third party. Who knows? Disney buys it. I don't know. So that's the problem. Those 3 big. I think if I had to put the top 3, probably the one trailing the most is Yu-Gi-Oh, and Yu-Gi-Oh is still extremely strong. Mm-hmm. I think it's easy. It might be much easier to crack the top 4, and no disrespect there, because the 4th place is Vanguard. Vanguard has been around for a while. The game is rebooted a few times. They have an anime that very accurately depicts how to play the game, which is really cool. Yu-Gi-Oh does have an anime, but it's completely different. Like, they essentially just cheat in the anime, as opposed to how the game is actually played.
Exactly.
So I think the first major step is taking down the place of Vanguard and becoming a number 4. Once you do that, I feel like Yu-Gi-Oh would be next on the list if I had to pick one. I think the Pokemon franchise, I think I saw somewhere on Facebook or something, I think is one of the most grossing just franchises in the world. Like, you put that up with like literally anything iconic that you can think about.
Right.
And I think Wizards of the Coast and Pokemon are very marginally apart as far as their place in the trading card game world. If we're talking about franchises, obviously just Pokemon blows everything out of the water.
Right.
But speaking in the card game world, only, I think you take Vanguard first, and then it might take another 5 years till you can maybe go toe-to-toe with Yu-Gi-Oh! Mm-hmm. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is very big, but like you said, they have decades, on them.
Yeah.
But the good thing is that they're working with stores like us that have once worked with or currently are working with a lot of these companies. Core TCG is officially working with, Konami, for example. We used to work with Konami. We currently work with Wizards of the Coast. So we can take the pros and cons, and we always want to kind of apply that to the game that we feel like it's obviously in all our best interests to continue the game going forward. So it's only it's only a matter of sharing that information, making sure that information is well reciprocated, because there are a lot of things that we relay that sometimes doesn't break through. So I think it's just a matter of acting on a lot of those gaps that can be closed relatively easily, um, and then, like I said, time is just going to be the main thing. I think the new player acquisition is something that Dragon Ball really hurts on, and I think until it gets that figured out in the form of a mobile app and doing a little bit better job of cross promotion, seeing the next Dragon Ball movie advertising the card game or something like that, I think that's what's going to take them a while. And I think if they cross that hurdle, then we can kind of tighten the gap onto that big three. But like I said, even overtaking Vanguard, I think should be celebration as if we broke into the top three, because they've been sitting at number 4 for quite some time. So,
I mean, if you also like, if you really think about it, at the end of the day, Bandai has had maybe one or two successful trading card games. They had the Naruto card game back in the day. Maybe that's it. So, as a card game developing company, they're kind of, I don't want to say new to the game, because I don't want to sound like I'm disrespecting the company at all, because I'm not. I'm just saying that as much of them having a footprint in the card game community, Naruto was very successful, but unfortunately, it's no longer a supported card game, and now you have Dragon Ball, which is their longest running card game that they've had, that they currently have, and obviously there's a couple new ones that are developing that are going to be coming out soon in the States, but I'm always surprised at how quickly Dragon Ball was able to climb that ladder in the short time that it's been out. So I mean, obviously it's a marathon, not a sprint. But I think because it has such a strong IP behind it, it definitely has the potential of being a more consistent game, as long as it stays healthy and as long as obviously the community, pushes it forward and stuff like that. So with that being said, Dragon Ball has always been notorious for adding new keywords and new mechanics in basically every set since its inception. So where we're at right now with set 11, obviously the new keywords and stuff like that are like the servant and overlord skills. But in set 10, probably the biggest thing that we got was the introduction of the Dragon Ball version of a Planeswalker or a Unison card. So I just wanted to get your opinion as not only a shop owner, but also a tournament organizer. Do you think, kind of being like a Magic clone, like a Magic 2.0, that Dragon Ball has chosen the right game to emulate, trying to copy Magic, so to speak, and moving forward into introducing that new Unison mechanic into the game?
oh yeah, absolutely. I think fairly recently, probably like last week, we had a Magic player kind of like scope out one of the Dragon Ball games, and he saw counters on a Unison. Yeah, and he was like, "Is that like a Planeswalker?" I was like, "Yeah, it is." So it definitely sparks the interest and from other card games, especially Magic, because they know counters on a dude usually it means Planeswalkers or whatever. So definitely, I think that was probably one of the best moves that they can do. I think emulating Magic is definitely where you want to be, because the game is essentially a perfected version of Magic. And if you actually look at Magic, they actually took a page out of Dragon Ball Super's notebook or playbook by introducing land spells. So you can now, if you draw this 7-mana spell, you can use it as an energy on the flip side. So they made them two-sided, kind of like Dragon Ball Super leaders. So it will have a little arrow pointing to the back saying like, oh, you can use this as a land. So yeah, I mean, like, you can see that the Dragon Ball Super card games have had a big effect, I think, on specifically the Magic community and being able to kind of retain some of their customers in playing the game. And honestly, one of the best players in the game right now, actually Andrew Duvall, came from being a pretty high level, at least in Florida, he was a high level Magic player. And you can see how well he's been able to kind of like execute his vision of card games and spell economy and all this great stuff that kind of sets those professionals apart, and transition that over to Dragon Ball, because they are very similar in a lot of different ways. And I know some of the guys that have kind of worked on the game also kind of look at Magic, and they, obviously they're not going to, copy paste, but
Right.
I think there's a lot of things that you can take advantage of from other card games, even the successor ability that can kind of be traced back to Yu-Gi-Oh!
Mm-hmm.
And Synchro Summoning. So I think it's great. I think it makes it much easier to, get the interest of other card game players, because you're just using a term that they already know. Synchro Summoning, Planeswalker, whatever, XYZ Summon, whatever it is. I think that definitely using those keywords and using those new mechanics are definitely a way to keep the player base interested. I just feel like sometimes those keywords can be a little bit underwhelming, and I think you could do that if you're Magic. But for example, the Overlord and the Servant has seen almost zero actual metagame impact.
Mm-hmm.
And I can name a few that's just blanking in my head right now, but I'm sure there's a lot of traits that they've kind of introduced that really haven't done much, where sometimes they just make them and you just never see a card with that text again, right? Like, Successor, I feel like they had just forgotten about it, and then now we got it in the new draft box. But
Right.
I'm sure there's others that I'm missing. It's just, they're just so, they just fly by, because it's just like they've introduced so many, they only stick with so little. And I feel like you could do that if you're Magic, but I don't know how it fits, for Dragon Ball. I feel like you should just keep working on, the existing ones, especially because none of them seem very bad, at least the ones that I can remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, I think also I think it's a big trial and error thing for Bandai. I feel like they put something out, they want to try it, see how it, is received by the community, and then they make the decision if it's something they want to continue or if there's something they want to discontinue. Like you mentioned Successor. Unfortunately, I wasn't playing the game around the time where Successor was, in its prime, so to speak, so I, had to learn it, but obviously it's a fairly simple mechanic to pick up. But then you look at set 10, you look at set 11, and there's none of it. So, I think obviously if you're looking at Dragon Ball's, habits of releasing product, they kind of stick to whatever current block they're working in. Obviously, to me, the most, the best example that I can use is when they were doing the Overrealm block, which, back in the day, Overrealm was probably the strongest pushed or the most pushed keyword in the game, and they release it within a certain amount of products, and then they move on to the next thing, whether it was a swap or barrier or whatever keyword they decided to use. I think it's a lot of touch and go with them. They just kind of see what's going to work and what's not going to work. But I don't think that maybe for like the hardcore, maybe not for the hardcore, but maybe for like the newer players, obviously having a lot of keywords, is going to be harder to pick up on. But I think like we said earlier, it's still early in Dragon Ball's life. It's not even 5 years yet. I think it's early enough to where they can afford to make some mistakes, and then as they start increasing the quality of the product they're putting out, they're going to start, getting over that hump finally. They're just kind of getting out of the trial process now till they start solidifying the game. But, I guess we're just going to have to see how it goes and keep supporting the game, for the future releases of products that we're going to be getting. So with that being said, we're getting close to a wrap-up time here, so I just kind of want to ask you one last question before we wrap it up. Do you, obviously when Dragon Ball first started becoming very popular in the competitive space, there was ARG and there was PPG. When you guys decided to take over fully, was it something that you were nervous about, or were you like excited to take the challenge and be like the number one TO for the Dragon Ball Super card game?
No, yeah, we were super excited. I mean, anytime we have the opportunity to do more, we're not one of those people that kind of like shy away from the opportunity. Honestly, we want to be given more work. Like, we're one of the one of the ones that, like I mentioned before, I'm very passionate in my work, and it's something that I take a lot of pleasure in doing. It's very fun for me, especially doing something that is well reciprocated by the community. So it just gives us more. It just gives us more passion to continue doing it. So we're very excited at the fact, and even to this day, we're kind of pushing for more of these webcam events. I mean, our webcam event sold out in 4 hours. Like, that's crazy. Like 128 people to sell out in 4 hours. I think that was the fastest selling webcam event that I have ever seen. Like, because I think I've been invited to the other ones from the other TOs, and those are normally the registration. I normally don't check the email that I register with, because I register with like a personal email.
Mm-hmm.
I always see those emails like 2 or 3 days after, and they're always open for registration. But this, I would have been upset if I was invited to my event. And it's cool because they did something special with this one. They made you put a preference on your favorite tournament organizer in order to be on their invite list. So, it speaks to how many people put us as their preferred TO, and then how fast they were able to overturn that submission, because they did it a little bit differently on the last wave, where we had to email 2 or 3 different mailing lists because it was kind of a different process. It was funky. But this one, by using the preferred TO, you can see that there was a lot faster catch rate as far as the people signing up. And we still have a lot of people messaging me, writing online, hey, I want to be in an event. I wasn't able to get it. Is there any wait list? I have 5 or 10 people already on a wait list waiting for people not to show up. And it's just crazy, and we're trying to get more of these online events going, because they really don't take as much time and work and effort as an actual event where we have to, pull 2 back-to-back 14-hour days.
Of course.
Go to this hotel in the middle of a city that we've never been to, and get to the venue, a couple hours before everybody else, set everything up. Like, it's just so much more frequent, the ability that we're able to do, not only provide great content and the breakdowns and all that stuff of our event, but, I mean, we should be taking advantage of this, extremely low overhead, and just, pump out these events so they all have, honestly, there should be maybe, 2 events going on, or no cap, right? Like, just, hey, let's break a record. Let's get 200, 300 people. Like, there's no reason why we wouldn't be able to attain those numbers, especially if you have, everybody on par, everybody doing their job. And, I think it's definitely something where we would love to always provide more, and we're always shooting for more. And sometimes there's a bottleneck down the road. Bandai doesn't have enough packs, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. I really don't know. But at the end of the day, we're always trying to provide the most, because we hate having people left out. That's honestly, we're not in a position where we can leave people out. Like Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon, Magic, sure, you're left out, you're left out. But I think in our game, I think we cannot, we can't miss those opportunities, because our current customer, our current clientele, the current, community, we have to keep that, because we know that we're not growing that during this time. Like, no, not many games are, unless you have that online client. You have those sponsorship videos on every YouTube video. Every YouTube video that I watch, I swear to God, I'm watching like Duel Links commercials or something like that. Like,
yeah.
We don't have that, right? We don't have that.
No.
Nobody's gonna go and just pick up the Dragon Ball Super card game, right? Like, so we need to grow our community, and the only way to do that is just make sure everybody gets their fill, everybody's happy. We keep an eye on the metagame. The ban list things have been okay, but you got to make sure that it's not stale, it's new. We got refreshing new product, not too often. Make a good ban list, make sure the game is fair, and, have enough events for people. I saw somebody post on Facebook the other day. They were like, is there anything going on this weekend? I don't care if it's just a casual event that you're just throwing online. Is there anything? Because I wasn't able to play the PvP.
I actually saw that
We
post.
can't be in that scenario. We just can't.
I saw that post right before we started talking. It's actually pretty funny you mentioned that.
Yeah. I was like, oh my God, I feel so bad, man. Like, I can definitely host another 200 people. Like, we've hosted a 400-person Yu-Gi-Oh! Online event, because we did the same series for Dragon Ball Super. We debuted it first with Dragon Ball Super. when COVID hit in March or whatever. And then once we kind of got a hang of it, we were like, okay, let's get ready to debut this for Yu-Gi-Oh! Because we know we're going to get like 20 times as many people, because obviously it's a bigger community, right? So, but yeah, we held a couple 400-person events, and it's just, it's cake when you know what you're doing. But a lot of these people have really not done it before. They were kind of like preemptive on it. It's just that, the good thing is that we've been, we kind of trained, learned to set up a Discord, contact people who knew what they were doing, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I don't want to keep it too long. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that we're trying to grow the Dragon Ball Super card game. We appreciated everybody's support. I appreciate you again for bringing me onto the podcast.
Oh, anytime.
Anything that we could ever do to improve anybody's experience with us ever, feel free to shoot it directly to me or write an email. I guarantee I'll see it. But yeah, we love the Dragon Ball Super card game. I do. And, I won't stop, trying to grow the community as big as it should be.
And it's awesome that you say that. We definitely need more people like that want to push the game forward and really have a genuine respect and a genuine love for the game, because, for the most part, most of us are in the same age group. We've probably all grown up with the anime and with, the toys and stuff, coming home at 4 o'clock, coming home from school, turning Toonami on, and boom, 4 o'clock, 4:30 p.m., there was Dragon Ball waiting for you. So, it's something that we all, it's funny because, you're talking about a community with over 10,000, easily, over 10,000 members that all have that one thing in common where it's like, yeah, we're playing a card game, but it stems from growing up watching the anime. So, I really appreciate you guys at PPG doing your thing, trying to help the game grow. Obviously, I'm trying to do that in my small area here, trying to help the game grow because it means a lot to me as well. So, with that being said, I want to thank you again for coming on. I really do appreciate it. You're more than welcome to come back on anytime you'd like. It was a fun conversation, and I hope that everything works out for you with your upcoming events and the regionals and all the mini regionals and stuff like that. For those of you listening, thank you so much. Obviously, you can find PPG on YouTube, on Facebook. You can pretty much find PPG anywhere if you're not living under a rock. So if you need to contact them or if you want to look for quality content, you definitely can't go wrong with PPG. Obviously, if you want to order products on TCG Player, you can do that through them as well. And that's pretty much it. So we're going to get on out of here. Thank you guys again so much for the support, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Be there or be squared.